There we go. I'm going to record it as well on my side, and Laura is recording it on her side as well. But so really, this is our way of just wanting to hear from a few of you that I've asked to speak today that I know have been using ChatGPT in your organizations. But it's not just for Colin, Lulu, and Edwin to talk. I'd love to hear from everyone, both your insights on how you're using it, or how your colleagues are using it, or even your concerns around how it's being used, or, you know, so this is quite an open forum. We just want to get a touch and feel around what's happening with ChatGPT in the classrooms. Before I start, I wanted to give you a little overview of TechWays for those that don't know us. I'll just show a short video, and did I share sound? Hold on one second. I just need to stop sharing and reshare so that I make sure that is working. And then what I wanted to do was share a little bit from the industry. So we've got technology partners that we've reached out to as preparation for this webinar, just to hear how they are busy using it and how it's manifesting in the corporate environment, so that you as educators preparing your learners, you have a sense of how that's working. I'm sure we've all been having these conversations though, so most of it won't be news to you, but it's just useful to share our insights. So let me move on. And yeah.
As a parent these days, I think it's very overwhelming to see where the world's going. You know, it's hard if you've got children to kind of advise them if you don't know yourself. No matter what happens in the world, we're going to have technology. We're going to have software in that technology. So being in the world of software is probably one of the safest things you can advise your children to do.
The world is changing. Our curriculum is changing at a much slower pace compared to the world. There are new technological advancements every single day. We do need to implement more exposure to cutting-edge technology skills in our high schools.
So you as a high school student, you know, where do you start? Start early. Start early as you possibly can, and start creating and building things and building your portfolio. Learn these skills so that when you get to the job space, you've got years of kind of experience and things to showcase.
I think that if we incorporate a TechWays platform with our high schools, learners can create games and programs that can carve out an exciting future.
The great advantage of the TechWays approach is really around the coursework is essentially guiding people down specific career paths.
Through TechWays platform, we learn that it's not impossible. We can do it. Every little thing that we learn makes it easier. After creating your first mobile app, it becomes easier, it becomes less daunting. You gain more confidence.
The one thing about software that people don't understand, it's the most creative thing. It's like creating a painting, except it's in code. And it's an outlet for creativity and imagination. So there's many positive spin-offs.
Unfortunately, we live in a world where having a degree is not enough to guarantee you a good job or a job that you want. I think what sets you apart is these extra qualifications and these courses and skills that you learn on the side.
So I'm not going to go through, you know, our vision and all of that. I think you got that from the video. Just for those that are not, there's a few of you online today that are already using the TechWays platform in your classes, but we've got a grade 8 and 9 program that is sort of targeted at bringing grade 8 and 9 the sort of base level of technology skills, Word, Excel, Python, HTML, game development, mobile app, and then we've actually added AI, cybersecurity, and PowerPoint as well to that. So if anyone is interested in finding out more about the beginner's pathway, we've been running that successfully across a number of schools online as well with us today, as well as additional schools that aren't online. So that is the marketing pitch. So you can choose to ignore all of that, but I just wanted to make sure that you guys knew who we were. The aim of today, really some insights from industry, to hear from you guys, the coalface. It's not meant to be ChatGPT 101, because I assume that most of you guys online have at least used it or had some exposure to it, or at least know people that are using it. So I do have some tips prepared, like a little cheat sheet and things, which I can send you afterwards. But it's more important for me today that we hear from you, and you know, share the knowledge in the room. So that's really what the aim of today is. Before I hand over to, I'm going to do it in the order of Colin, then Lulu, and then Edwin. So those are the order that I would like you guys to speak in. But before I do that, I just wanted to share some insights that we found from speaking to industry leaders. So that guy in the video, Jason, he used to head up R&B's innovation, like software in-house team. He now runs his own development house. He does unbelievable amounts of custom bespoke development work across the world. So they are obviously using ChatGPT extensively. However, and here's the thing that I found quite interesting, is that in the world of IP, you know, when you are creating solutions that are you're creating them, you want to make sure they're protected intellectually, etc. They are not using ChatGPT for coding and for checking on solutions or for debugging or any of that when they are working on proprietary stuff, because they are aware that it's an open source environment. So when it goes out there into the ChatGPT ether, it can get used, and it's unclear how it could then get funneled back into someone else asking the right question. So what they are doing is they are taking instances of ChatGPT, and there are a few different alternatives to ChatGPT that are not created by OpenAI. So Meta has released an open source ChatGPT instance. There's another one that sorry, Yumna, I'm just going to mute you so that someone is feeding back to me. So they're creating instances of a slightly less amazing version of ChatGPT, but it's still very good, and they are hosting that on their own servers, so that everything that they ask it is not getting fed back into the open source global environment. And where they see these instances of ChatGPT going is that there will be, sorry, can I just ask everyone to mute themselves while we're talking, because it's just hard for me to, I hear someone feeding back. Thank you. So where they see ChatGPT going is that corporates will buy instances that will be trained in your specific sector. So, you know, if you're a software creator that is specializing in the editing and you know, news industry, for instance, you're going to have a ChatGPT instance that will be offline. So it won't be connected to the internet. It won't be feeding back all of your data and all of your, so both your inputs and the outputs are potentially proprietary, and you don't want that to then go back into the, you know, into the open source environment. So there will be instances that are more protected and more boundaried in terms of who can access them, and they obviously won't grow. The learning and the training on those ChatGPT models will not be as good as the open source one, because they're not going to have billions and billions of queries coming at it. But it's more protected, and for a corporate that is worried about IP, that's a very important thing to consider. The programmers, oh my gosh, my programmer friends are basically getting to the point where they are almost, what is the one stat, 80% more efficient. They are able to almost double the output that they were creating before using ChatGPT. So it just enables them to, debug the code, write the code so much quicker. They are using it extensively and they're not afraid of it. So there's no, this whole question around how is ChatGPT going to do away with coders? Coders do not think so. They think this is just going to increase the need for them and democratize it so much more. But you still need to, and Edwin, I'm going to, love your input on this when you talk. You still need to understand coding, syntax, and not specifically on every single language. They do see that there will be more like natural language processing languages that will come in where you don't need to be so syntax specific. However, understanding the concept of programming and how how it unfolds is going to be even more critical, because you need to be able to know how it functions in order to ask the right questions of ChatGPT. Content creators, I'm sure every one of us have got content creators in our networks. So I've been speaking to people in the PR space and the marketing space, and they're all using it extensively. However, with massive caveats. And this is where, who was it, Claude? You were saying you've got an English language conference that you want to talk about ChatGPT at. The thing with ChatGPT right now, and this might change as it gets better and better, but it is still very mediocre in terms of what content comes back. You can make it better by refining it and having the prompt be more clear with exactly what you're wanting. But all the content creators I've spoken to say they will use it as a first draft. They will feed it they call it nuggets. Those taglines that make something just stand out for a human audience. Those emotions or those stories that make something grab you when you read it. It's those pieces that they either feed into ChatGPT, or they then take the draft that ChatGPT spat out for them to then make sure that they pepper in the humanity, which is, everyone that's used ChatGPT, you'll see it's very bland. It's very sort of academically written. It's very correct. Everything is very correct, but it lacks like flavor and spice and it's the humanity, the human story. So the content creators, there's always going to be a need for amazing content creators. But if you are just an okay, mediocre content creator, like, you're going to need to up your game, because ChatGPT will annihilate you. And then lastly, entrepreneurs. Someone like me, Colin, I'm sure you're going to be able to share this too. I have been using it extensively for market insights. So I just wrote a proposal. My proposal was around getting youth to do like a web development course, and then being able to skill them up to be able to sell their services on like Fiverr or one of those gig economy platforms. And so I was wanting to write a context story of like, why is this necessary? Like, why do we need to upskill our youth because they're unemployed? Why is web development useful? So I just fed in a whole bunch of parameters that I wanted ChatGPT to give me, and it was mostly good enough. Like, I've spiced it up a little bit, but it was mostly good enough. So market insights and things around what's potential, what's opportunity. It gives you such a quick indicator of where there is opportunity and what you need to be considering in your business. I think any sort of generalist is using ChatGPT extensively. So that's it from me. Francois, did you have any, I know Francois is online. Francois is one of our team members that's been talking to a number of schools. Do you have any insight that you want to share?
Yeah, I've got a few things. So yeah, I chatted to some teachers. And yeah, they started using it in classrooms, especially to help them set up questions for classroom, just to spice it up a bit, just so that it's not the same old, questions that you usually get, the generic stuff. So they're switching it up a bit, and also just helping their students out in the class just with general English language, and also in technology classes. So they are starting to use it. There are obviously some schools that are not keen for it because of kids doing their essays on it and plagiarism and things like that. So that's obviously the downside to it. But I think the positive side to ChatGPT is that it's going to, I think it's going to be way more positive than there's any negatives to it. That's from the school side. Then, sorry, I just got my notes here. So basically from like the industry side, I mean, a lot of companies are using it for research and development. Obviously, like Jane said, some content generation. So like your guys writing blogs and, social media posts and things like that. A lot of companies are using, or personal people are using that for that. Also, some people are using it to assist in like language barriers. So they're using it for companies that say you from here English and you need to speak to someone in China or in France, whatever. It's a great tool to break the language barrier and to communicate nicely to people in different language. I obviously also spoke to some programmers. They loving it. So what they're doing is because ChatGPT is now allowing APIs to connect to their server or system. So then, programmers can actually pull in ChatGPT's resources into their own programming code. And if it's an online thing, it's sort of live communication. So, it can become a chatbot pretty much for their system, and it doesn't take a ton of resources from their own system, and it's a relatively cheap way to get yourself going. And yeah, they're loving it. And like Jane says, the guys also helping to debug and do code. And I'm a bit of a enthusiast when it comes to robotics, so I've used it a little bit to play around with writing some code for Arduino. It's really, really impressive what you can do with it. So from that aspect, loving it. What else? Some companies also starting to use it as a virtual assistant. So they're bringing it into like their Excel and their programs that are compatible with it, and using it as to make automatic bookings for your calendar. I can go on. There's so much, so don't want to carry on too much. But yeah, this is, I don't know, the options and the opportunities are yet to be found and met yet. I think it's endless at this moment in time. I think your own creativity and how to use it is going to be, how far it can go. I don't know from here, Joanne, I don't know who's going to take over from me.
No, thanks, Francois. That's great. I just wanted to hear, because I know you've been speaking to a bunch of people. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Colin. Sorry, I mixed the order around when I introduced it before. So it will be Colin, then Edwin, then Lulu, just to have some IT injected in the middle. And really, yeah, Colin, Edwin, Lulu, if you guys can let people know whether you would like questions along the way or whether you'd like questions at the end, it's up to you how you want to run your session. I will stop sharing. I don't know, each of you have got, if you've got slides, you're welcome to share them as well. I've given you sharing rights.
I guess it's my time to talk, Joe. Shall I just go? Cool.
Please.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for giving of your precious time. Colin Northmore is my name. I'm the principal of the Evolve.Online school. I'm going to, I welcome questions in the chat because that way, if many people have a similar question, we can sort of collectively answer those questions as opposed to people. But obviously at the end, if there's time and Joe allows, we can unmute and let you ask your question out loud. This evening, I'm just going to very quickly run through some of the ways in which ChatGPT is being used by my teachers at Evolve.Online. Also look at some of the ways we might be using it in the future. And I just want to look at what's on the horizon. What are the kind of things we can anticipate from the impact of AI in education as we go? And I want to start with this. what has actually changed? Because if you go, and this is a story that's been told time and time again. If you went into an operating theatre in 1950 and you looked at the equipment in the theatre and the methodologies and the processes and what they did, and you go into a modern theatre today, you would never accept an operation being done on you or one of your family in a 1950s laboratory today. I mean, operating theatre today. And yet, when we look at the physical presence and the methodologies and the processes followed in a classroom today, a lot of our parents, and particularly in the online space, they're uncomfortable about having their children online because it's not familiar enough to what they experienced as a child. And so I talk about the snapback effect. And the example I give is when we pivoted online for COVID, we had an existential need to pivot. We could not, especially in the independent schools network, we could not earn a salary unless we found a way to teach online. And when we went back to school, we took very little of what we had learned or succeeded with in our online. We kind of collectively drew a deep sigh of relief and went back to teaching in exactly the same way. And I know there are exceptions and I know there are little spots where things change. But if you look at education in the independent network as a whole, and you go into a classroom and you see what's going on in that classroom, you will see very little impact of the COVID pivot in the daily expression of work. Justin Reich, the head of the Learning Lab at MIT, wrote a book called The Failure to Disrupt. And in that book, he explains why technology has failed to disrupt education. And if he was to write that book today, I think there would be a very different answer at the end of that book. Because fundamentally, artificial intelligence has become the biggest disruptor that education has ever faced. And the sooner education institutions and teachers and those involved in developing content get their head around that, the less likely it is to be a dangerous disruptor in your space. Harvard University started with 400 books. It was a Puritan priest who had collected 400 books, and he used those 400 books, and that was Harvard University. And why was it a university? Because 400 books in one place at the same time in those years was remarkable. In fact, the library burnt down, and all but 3 of those 400 books were destroyed in the fire. But it's about managing the knowledge. We've gone from a knowledge paucity, a lack of generally spread knowledge, to just like endless knowledge that can be accessed anytime you like, anywhere you like, on any device. And AI gives us the first opportunity to take control of that space. I would go down a rabbit hole on this one, but let me get to the topic and why I'm here today. So why or how are we going to be using, or how do my teachers, and some of my teachers are on the call, and they could probably add 50 other things. And I also have to admit upfront that I sent them a SOS and said, how are you using ChatGPT in your classrooms? And so all of the ideas that I'm spreading now are my teachers' ideas, not necessarily mine, okay? We've got teachers in the English department who get their children to generate an essay on ChatGPT on a topic, and then critique that essay in groups and ask themselves, what is wrong with this essay? How would they improve this essay? You know, what has ChatGPT got right? What has ChatGPT got wrong? And it becomes the basis for deeper learning. It becomes the basis for not being stressed. You can think of anxiety. In the online sector, we get a lot of children who suffer from anxiety. So that anxiety, that sort of writer's block, where do I start? I need to write an essay. Where do I start? You're taking all of that away and you're asking them to engage with the deeper questions right from the beginning. You can create slide sets. I'm talking now about, sorry, let me just say, I'm talking about how children use it in the school. So they can use it to improve their writing. They can write something and feed it to ChatGPT and say, how would you improve this? It allows them to understand bias, and it allows them to understand, like Joe said earlier, the importance of their own voice in the story. Okay, storytelling is fundamental to human experience. ChatGPT hasn't got there, and I have to add the word yet at the end of that sentence. Okay. So you can ask ChatGPT to write a particular article on the Second World War from a German perspective, from an American perspective, from an Italian perspective, from a British perspective, and then you can have a fantastic debate in your class about what's different between those perspectives and why would that difference exist. Our students use it to create study notes and to create flashcards for themselves. And one of my teachers said that one of our kids use it to get it to explain science concepts because they didn't understand those concepts when the teacher taught it. So they get ChatGPT to do it. I got ChatGPT to write a code of conduct for online students in an online school. 2-pager is what came out. And then I said, rewrite that for me so that a grade 1 child can understand it. And the output was remarkable. So policy writing, which we hate, that's something that it can do. Obviously, we've spoken about code. I'm not going to go down that road. There's a whole journey around coding and that sort of thing. And I think that one of the things that children are starting to understand is the quality of the output of ChatGPT is deeply dependent on the quality of the prompt that you put in. And so one of the things that I think is going to be on the horizon is prompt engineering. Okay, but I'm afraid ChatGPT can do that better than us as well. I'll give you in the chat a killer prompt where you can get ChatGPT to build your prompt for you. As far as in a teacher's daily work is concerned, it's already been mentioned. You can get it to set questions for you. You can get it to create a slide set on a particular subject. But yeah, is where it becomes exciting. The dream of differentiated instruction. I can get it to do a slide set for me, and then I can get it to do the same slide set and say, but do it so that a student at a younger age would understand that. And we talk about, if you want to look at differentiation in an online space, we talk about must do, should do, aspire to do. So the children must do the must do stuff. That's the baseline. The should do stuff is when you get them to the 65 to 80%. And then the aspire to stuff is when they're able to exceed mastery and get beyond. So you can, and please, Joe, just time keep for me because I get carried away. Okay. So you can actually say, I want the same slide set, but I want it at 3 different levels of complexity. Or I want these questions written. But now scaffold these questions, this question for me. So write this question so that it guides the process, and then just give the question in its own right. Our teachers use AI to personalize learning as well. This is not necessarily ChatGPT, but we use a maths app in Advitech where as the child is learning, it's picking up where the gaps are and creating a personalized learning path for that child to follow. Personalization has been one of the myths of technology. It's never been achieved on scale in education. And with the AI as a tool, it suddenly becomes a possibility. Write me a curriculum for this child who has the following difficulties. So when you start looking at neurodiversity and you start looking at issues like that, for example, there's an AI that will give a description of what's on a video. Now imagine a blind child in your class who cannot see what's on the video. And most videos don't have a script that describes what's happening on the video. You can get the AI to describe what has happened on the video, and then you can get the AI and different AI to turn that into a voiceover. So the ability for AI to open up the opportunity for accessibility. One of the ways I personally use it, and I'm nearly finished, one of the ways I personally use it is I do a podcast and when I've done a podcast, I want to have a blog that goes with that particular topic. So I do the podcast. I use an AI to transcribe the output. I use an AI to take the sound file and turn it into a transcription. And then I throw that transcription into ChatGPT and I say, write me a blog based on this transcription. And then I have to, of course, clean it up, tidy it up, add in things, put in visuals, do whatever I need to do to turn it into a blog that speaks in my voice, as opposed to the blog that speaks in that voice. On the horizon, AI marking of complex tasks like English essays. Right, we're already experimenting at Evolve with a tool like that, or we're about to start experimenting at Evolve with a tool that's been developed for us on that. The McKinsey report pointed out that most teachers spend a maximum of 42% of their time in direct teaching of children. And there's a lot of time spent on administration, marking, preparing lessons, etc. If you can get the AI to take over a lot of that load, in my school it's 58%, we measure it. But in most schools in South Africa, it's somewhere between 18 and 39%. AI should free us from the mundane and allow us to be creative. A bespoke AI you've spoken about already. Having an AI with your documents, with your materials, developing, if you think about it, if you can collect together all the question papers that have ever been set by all the teachers in Advitech and pop that into an AI and say, generate a content management system for me, where it will generate a test on demand from these question sets. And then finally, I just want to emphasize that you have to remember that the human is not in the AI. And so whatever AI outputs, you've got to be the one who puts the human into it. Okay. So I've kind of exhausted what I want to say today, but I see there is a question about the accuracy of outputs around neural diverse curriculums. Again, one of my answers to that question is it links to prompt generation. The better your prompt is, the better the output is going to be. Oh, I promised to put that killer prompt in the chat. The better the output is, the better the prompt is, the better the output is. I'll put it in while someone else is talking, but I want to end with a caution. Professor Benjamin Rosman, who is the professor of machine learning at Wits University, warns that as fast as what people will come up with AIs to check whether something has been written by an AI, AIs will be improving so that AI checker can't check whether something was written by an AI. And I know that one of the biggest concerns that teachers have is plagiarism or children using the AI to write their essays for them. And I think that's a mindset problem. You are worried about content. You're worried about whether the child can understand the 10 reasons for the Second World War. That's the wrong thing to be asking a modern child to think about. You should be giving them the reasons and getting them to debate it. And Prof. Rosman, one of his biggest concerns is if you put a piece of work into the AI and it comes up as generated by an AI, but the child actually wrote it themselves, that child is never going to be able to prove that an AI didn't write it for them. Okay, and so you've also then got to be willing to trust the checker that it's accurately identifying something, and if you believe it,
and it's going to be hard to do that, as you say, AI is always going to be ahead of the curve. I want to open up just for a few minutes, 2 minutes, if anyone has got questions for Colin, and then I want to hand over to Edwin. But Colin, thank you so much for your insights. I think you also framed it nicely for the overall school environment, not just for one subject, which I think is really great and why I wanted you to go first. Any questions from anyone? You can unmute yourself if you want to talk, or you can put it on the chat. also love to hear comments, how, share with us anything that, you've been using that Colin suggested that his teachers are using or wanting to use. I'd love to just get a sense of how everyone is finding ChatGPT. No? Okay, maybe we'll keep some more questions for at the end then. Edwin, can I ask that you come online and share some of your insights from your and my discussions, how you've been using it in the technology space specifically. I'm also happy for you to share from your other colleagues what they've been saying and how they've been using it. So I'm going to hand over to you, Edwin.
All right, thank you, Joanne. Good evening, guys. So, as Joanne put it, I am also one of the guys that are using ChatGPT, and thank you so much to Franz for sharing. I don't have to go into the intro and whatnot. So at my school,
Edwin,
we've got
can you share your camera? We'd love to see you. It's just
you
much.
Oh, okay. How's that? Okay. All right. So I will only be a minute. I think much has been said. So in my area of expertise, I'm a software developer and I'm also a IT teacher. At my school, some of them are against ChatGPT, especially the languages department, English. They find it like it's harder for them to prove that it was done by the students themselves. But for me, I think it's a good initiative because I always give them an example of a library. And now we've got internet. People can now Google more than they go to the library and read a book. You don't need to read it. You can just get a summary of the book and you understand the book. But we all get to understand the content. So when I'm using ChatGPT, I use it especially when I'm doing demonstrations. If I can share my screen.
Go ahead, Edwin.
How do I I share my screen? There you go, green button, share. I will be sharing. I just want you to experience life as an IT teacher. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen, basic.
You can just share the whole screen, Edwin.
Yes, I want to share the whole screen. So problem is with these devices, I have to allow, there you go, done. Later. Just join, let me know when you guys start seeing my screen.
Not yet.
Okay, working on it. There you go.
Is this one of those examples where Google, Apple, and Microsoft are not talking to each other nicely?
See, they don't like each other. Okay, so I think you can see me now, right? The screen, yeah, okay. So this is my normal day. I only have 1 hour to teach information technology. There's some concepts that you can't dumb down or summarize, and kids love to see you do it before they do it themselves. So let's say I'm tackling a question which involves inheritance. We will not even talk about that, but this is what I use. So on my visual code, I've got AI as an extension. So each time I type something, it tries to guess what the next line of code is. So I understand what Joanne was saying when she was saying that AI programmers are liking it because it's 80% productivity. That's true, because if it took me 3 days to design a management system, it takes me 4 hours just to do it, because if I do one class, I can ask it to do the next class. And indeed, you have to be skilled in what you're doing for it to do that, because you need to know what you're saying and what you're programming. So let's say I want to start by typing something. I'm sure you can see my screen just starts turning gray. This is it trying to guess what I'm about to say, and that's true. So once I press tab, I'm done with that part. Then I move on. So I can keep on doing this until I finish coding, and I can try and do that, and then it's going to guess. If, let's say I want to put a try there, and I wanted to read a text file, then it already knows what I want to do. So try, catch, and exception, tab. So you can see just by clicking, all you need to do is to know exactly where you're going to put the code, and then it does it for you. So that's how I've been using AI. ChatGPT also, I use ChatGPT to, when I'm reviewing work for my learners, I always give them work to do at home as homework. So they send me tons and tons of codes that I'm supposed to review and send feedback. So before, I used to sit down, print it out, and then go through the whole code, read it, and then just feed it into a scanner and then send it to them. But now I will just take the code, put it in my chat. Let's see if I can get, oh yeah, and I'm also in TechWays. So it's, where is it? Sorry, yeah, so this is me here. So what I do is we're working on something. Where's the Wakanda? So if I'm fixing something, let's say they send me code, I can put the code in, and then ChatGPT will go through it. I never like ChatGPT to fix my code, because it ends up putting things that we are not covering. For instance, it will add classes or extensions that I haven't taught, and it only confuses the learners. So what I wanted to do is, I always wanted to comment where errors are, and then it's my job to just go to where the error is. For instance, if it's this, then I can tell them this public static was supposed to be private, or this is not a static field, things like that. So that's how I'm using ChatGPT. So this would have taken me like 25, 45 minutes to go through this. I can now do it in 10, maybe less minutes, and then give them feedback. So if I give quicker feedback to my learners, they get to cover more chapters, and then they get to do more problems. They get to solve more problems. And also, I allow them to use it, but you always know. That's one thing about being an educator. You can know who's your best, who's your strong learners, who are your weaker learners. So if your weaker learner gives you something that is including things like inheritance, yet they're in grade 10, then you know exactly where the problem is. And then you can sit them down and say, oh, yeah, how do you get to do that? When I do my SFDs, I never want to think about it, like what the previous speaker said. You never want to sit down and think about what you're going to do. I just say, okay, let's plan. So it's my personal planner. We went here for our SFD with my grade 9. Wanted to ask if it's familiar with the place, right? Stop generating, and then this is what I wanted to do. So the more detailed your prompts are, the better results that you get. So from there, we had a trip outline, what we're going to do, the project that they were going to do, and a memo that I sent out to the learners, project requirements, and the rubric that we were going to use. So this was the first attempt, which was a nice second attempt, until we got to the final attempt, where it produced a brilliant rubric which covered the tasks and the features and the sections that I wanted the learners to cover. So from there, copy, paste, put it on Google Classroom together with the rubric, and then learners now have something to look at. So for me, that's how I've been using ChatGPT for the maths department. they have been, and also, sorry, it also reviews the code. So if I'm working on a website, this was HTML, they're building a website of what they saw when they went to the museum, the Naval Museum. They have to have a website that has 4 or 5 tabs and briefly describe what they saw, pictures, make something that looks, that can be commercialized. And then for the maths department, they're doing weekly quizzes, they generate quizzes. The problem with our textbook is it only has enough problems or questions for that particular section that you would want to cover. So if you want more, then you have to try to figure them out. And then it's time consuming to start thinking of math questions and then work on a memo. But when you've got using ChatGPT, you can just generate more questions that are similar to. So you can start off with one equation, and then it can give you, ChatGPT can give you 10 more equations that are similar to what you're looking for. So I think that's what we do in a nutshell.
Edwin, thank you so much. I mean, what I'm loving is the input from both you and Colin, from both how it's being used by teachers, and there's a lot of similarity around lesson planning, saving you time, generating memos, giving feedback. So I mean, there's definitely going to be a whole bunch of tutors that, like AI tutors, that are going to be specializing in subjects that we're going to be training them on, so that they can help and give personalized support to learners. I would like to open up for questions, but one of my questions to you, Edwin, is how are the learners using it specifically in the technology classes, IT classes? How are learners using it? Are they using it extensively?
Okay, so my learners, they use it, let's say they don't understand the process flow. Let's say we creating a project or they're working on a class. So what they do is they just take the code and then they put it in ChatGPT, and then it explains to them what's happening in the code. So if they would want to see the attributes of what we've been learning, if they are evident in the next exercise that we're doing, they go through it. So, and like going through the whole chapter of, let's say you're in grade 11, going back to the grade 10 stuff, you can just get like a jump start from 10 to 11, then they use that. So that's how they've been using it. Okay. But the school tries to manage it, but like what the other speaker was saying, you know, who will, how would they know? I know we say that we've got ChatGPT checkers, but you know, it's, you know, there's some boundaries, and that is still something that's worth to be debated on.
Yeah, and I see in the chat.
I see someone. Yeah.
I see in the chat, Colin. I don't know if you want to ask your question directly, but Colin wants you to know the AI that you've added onto your IDE. Is it just like you can pull it in via some sort of plugin, or I mean, my understanding is that most IDEs these days have got the ability to add AI into it.
Yes, some do, some have, and then they mess up your IDE, and then some, there are a few that work. So with this one, it was just an extension with VS Code. So what I just did was, if you can allow me, I just went here and then looked for an extension. So you can see all these extensions that you can use. There's this one. There's this one. There are a lot of extensions that you can use that can assist you to finish doing your code. But like what we've been saying, you have to understand the code first. You have to understand the language first for you to be able to use it.
I noted that, Edwin, you know, the AI needs a starting point. So if you don't type in the first few letters, it doesn't know what to prompt you on. Edwin, do you mind sharing the sort of extensions that you recommend, so that my folks don't have to learn through bitter experience to the ones that actually mess up your IDE. I'd be grateful with it for any sort of recommendations you could make about what extensions we should add.
Can I, just in the interest of time, because I know we still want to go to Lulu, can I ask that you either put that in the chat, Edwin, or I'll share it to everyone afterwards? It is great input, but I want to make sure that we have time for Lulu. Anyone got questions for Edwin before we move on to hear from Lulu and Senstidians? Any questions, anyone? Any comments? Okay, I'm going to assume silence means that everyone is having their red wine in the background and you don't want to talk. It's fine. We'll hear from you at the end, I hope. Lulu, go ahead. Lulu, we can't hear you.
Sorry.
There we go.
I haven't done any of this for a long time. Let's just try and get to it. Okay, so my name is Lulu Berger. I have very recently joined Senstidians College. I'm on the boys' college side, but essentially we are. Okay, is this playing or is it? Can you see my screen?
Yes, I
Joe?
see your screen. I see it.
But it's not in play mode. And now there's something. So let me just go there. Sorry. Aha, there we go. Okay. Just so that you're aware is that this is my school. We call ourselves the Power of 8 because in essence, we actually 8 schools all together. We range from grade RR to grade 12. In junior prep, we co-ed, and then it splits up into monastic education. We also run a Saturday school, a complete school with a principal called Tandawazi that I'm sure a lot of you know about. So why I've put this slide here is that we as a college, there's a lot that we need to think about around AI. We're also quite worried. Our parents are asking, it's not just the learners, it's not just the teachers, it's also the parents are wondering, so, what kind of education is my child going to walk away with if they can just AI everything? So for me, I'm currently at our school, because it's such a topical thing, we have done a lot of talking, like constant conversations. We've had sessions. We've brought in some experts. We listen to them. I must say, Prof. Benji was great, Colin, definitely. And I think higher ed must be even more worried than we are, because they have 500 students. At least we have 28 or 30 students. We know them. We have a face. We can see what they're writing. So I think, the conversations in those spaces are also very important. So we bring experts in. We have exposed our teachers to it quite a lot, even though they apprehensive. I get a lot of emails. Can you please check if this was written by ChatGPT? But in the end, you put it through things checkers, and it never knows. Then the other thing is, now what we've done is we've come up with a dedicated team, because we're such a big college, and they are doing active research and development. So this team is from across our colleges. We've actually taken them out of classrooms, and for 2 weeks, this is what they do. This morning, we've had a data research questionnaire, specifically for our teachers and specifically for our students. They've asked the students, how are you using it? Unfortunately, I don't have that data now, because we only did it this morning, but I'm happy to share that with you when it's collated. But it's definitely, they're using it. They're using it for all sorts of things. I think the students are very aware that there's hallucinations, that they have to customize, that they have to go in. But I always say, with technology like this, there's always a good and a bad side. You get your good students and they will like tweak it and make it good and, work on it and be transparent and say, I've used this. And then you will have those that just, try to make it easy for themselves and skip the line. So that is why, as a colleague, we've decided that we really need a consolidated guideline. I don't want to even use the word policy. I'm not great on policies. And I think with this kind of thing, the moment you create a policy, something new will come in and you just have to create it again. Also, we have very clear timelines. So, and expectations of this team. They are going to feed back to us, to our parents, about the way forward. Oh, wow. Currently came through there a little bit late. So the things that this is actually stuff, and I'm gonna just play it through. You really have to consider when you're looking at AI in an educational environment. So what a clear definition. There are so many tools. I mean, we've heard tonight, there are so many tools that we can use. Which are the tools that's really educationally sound? We need to get age restrictions. Some of these tools are 18 and above. And now our 13, 14 years olds are using it. So there's definitely a concern around how our students are using it and what kind of tools. I downloaded Bing today, and Bing is using ChatGPT 4, and it's much easier to log in. Well, if you have a Microsoft license. I must say with ChatGPT, OpenAI, we've had lots of issues with teachers logging in. Then it moans about the phone number. Then it moans about this. I think they do want you to have a paid for kind of situation. Then there's obviously the ethical considerations around the ethics, making everybody aware about how they use it, why they use it that way. I think this is a fantastic learning curve for everyone. We have to bring ethics in. We always talk about ethical technologies and how we can use them. So this is now our big opportunity. Then there's also a large thing around data protection. What are they doing with our data? The Google is taking our data anyway, I know that. But with the POPIA Act and things like that, AI is dependent on a lot of data collection. So we need to put that on the table. What are they doing with our students' data? And I know Apple has banned AI completely across all their stuff, their organization, because of a data breach can happen. Somebody can search something and give away the new iPhone hundreds, biggest, whatever function that nobody knew. So there are companies, the companies are also nervous because of this thing. It's not regulated. We don't know where it's going. And then lastly, the transparency and accountability. I think if our learners can, if we can do an exercise like the English paper, and instead of the English essay, somebody just lifts it, we say, okay, it's transparent, I've used it, and these were the prompts I used, and therefore, this is what the output I got. And then I use these prompts, and this is how, because I think, and Colin will agree with me, because we've been in this game for a very long time. We've been asking that children can just ask proper questions for so long, and deep questions, and go into depth about, and ask a question, more questions. And I think this actually gives us that opportunity as educators to really get them to think about, how am I getting the information that I need? So I hope that going forward, when a teacher gives out a project, that the prompts are part of it. So my art teacher came, and we decided that we're going to run an AI in art competition, very strictly, we gave them a lot of agency in the tools that they could use, but we gave them a theme and a little bit of criteria. And in the Google form that they submitted their entry, they actually could win a bucket of KFC. Because I'm in the boys' college, that's something that's really important. So they generated this art, and I put it up, and I had judges, and we looked at it, and their prompts were the things that we actually were looking at. The art's there, and a lot of it looked the same because the prompts were the same. So I think the uniqueness and creativity and the accountability in using these tools are going to be more and more important. Then I also had a conversation with my grade 11 CAT boys today, and it's very, very interesting how they view it from a learner point of view. So my one boy, Fletcher, he was saying that he would love to be able to use all of these tools because I think this is what a lot of schools are doing at the moment. They do a lot of research and stuff at home or in class, but the moment there's a test, they do it on paper. Because, you know, this is where we're going to. I mean, you're still going to, at the end of matric, go and sit in a hall and sit for a 3-hour exam. And then, well, I hope it's going to change, Colin, I really, but the IAB, I'm sorry, when? Okay, so I mean, that's our reality, and it's also our parents' reality. You know, and then they go to varsity and whatever. So, a lot of my teachers do that. They just say, okay, we're writing, you can do all the research you want, but we are writing the test on paper with a pen in class. Anyway, so I got to think, what is the actual impact then on our learners? You know, what is it gonna look like for them? So maybe as teachers, we need to review our current assessment methods. Maybe there's a project-based side, and maybe there's a test side, because unfortunately that's how the system is at the moment. Maybe the projects are at home and we flip the classroom, except that they never do the work. I mean, we've been flipping the classroom for so long, and then you send them home and they have to like engage with the content, and then they come to class and they never did it, and then you have to give the content to them anyway. But anyway, so maybe the IB need to relook the curriculum. That's what one of my learners suggested. They said, you know what, this is gonna up the game for everyone. I think creativity and like you were saying, your own voice and things are going to become more and more important. And I do think our teachers needs to really come on board. I think a lot of my teachers are like, oh no, this will go away. We don't want to deal with this now. You know, we've got matrics and they have to write exams. Why must we deal with plagiarism and all of that? So I do think there needs to be a constant training and development for our teachers to be able to then see how amazing AI can be. So just lastly, this is my last one, and I'm leaving you with lots of questions. These are the questions we are asking at the moment, and which we will have answers definitely within the next week, and we will then put guidelines together as to what we are going to do. So what are the real benefits? And I think Colin said that at the beginning. You know, what is it? What is really changed so much? When Google came out, we all went, and look where we are now. What do we see as the drawbacks? And my biggest drawback is the fact that it's not monitored. It's out there on its own. And I think in an educational space, that's always for the world. I don't care, but in an educational space, some of our children are really young. There's the dark side to all of this. Nobody's going, okay, please don't tell a grade 7 boy how to build a bomb. You know, it needs to be, for me, that's the scary part. And what would our learners' performance look like, you know, in 5 or 10 years' time? Let's say they're now the ChatGPT AI generation. We can't keep our assessment methods the same, but let's say they do stay the same. And these kids come through a system and they can't write papers. They can't study anymore. They work in a different way, which I actually prefer, but still the system requires them to do that. So I think that question needs to be asked. And then obviously, how do we communicate our guidelines, and how do we train our teachers? So that was my mouthful.
Lily, thank you so much. I think you know what I'm hearing from all of the speakers today is yes, there's the fears and the concerns that we mustn't, you know, ostrich them and assume that they're not important. They're super important to understand what the concerns are and how we manage them. But I mean, we heard, you know, me and Francois shared in the beginning how industry is using this. It's so extensive already within a 2-3 month period. It's ridiculous how fast this has caught on. And we're doing our kids a disservice, in my opinion, if we are not preparing them for this world. And I'm sure that's why all of you are online. So I'm preaching to the choir, but I think it is really important that we grapple with it for our kids' sake, even if we're still going to be doing, you know, paper-based exams. That's a question for another conversation. But I think having them engage with it and having ourselves engage with it so that we know how to help them is going to be critical. I want to open it up to the floor and hear if there's anyone. So maybe if you'd like to share any way you've used ChatGPT in your classrooms, if there's any concerns you want to pick up from what Lulu spoke about, and it was really helpful to hear how you guys are thinking about it, Lulu. And we'd love to hear that research that you do, and I'll share it with everyone afterwards. My internet is unstable because I'm load shedded, so hopefully you can hear me. Anyway, so opening it up to the floor. Anyone want to share anything?
Hello, can you hear me?
Go ahead, Anna.
Hello, I'm a music teacher, and I think I have a worry about what's coming up in 2 months' time. My students will be handing in research projects for their IEB portfolios, and they have to sign a thing saying that they haven't copied, and I used to put it through a plagiarism check. But now I just don't know how I'm going to approach it. I don't know if anybody has any suggestions of whether I tell them, just say to them, I trust you not to use AI, or whether I allow them to use that as a first step in their research.
No, I would say that as it stands right now, and I mean as of today, so that could change by the time this has to happen, they're fairly good.